As a new recruit to Planetside 2, you are instantly greeted by a vast armory of tools, weaponry, and ways to upgrade your combat effectiveness. So much to the point where it may seem a little overbearing, especially in the weaponry department. Today we're going to unpack some weaponry for you, so you better understand what options you have available. G'day there once again viewers, this is your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today guys, we're going to be doing a Quartermasters overview on the arsenal of assault rifles available to the Vanu Sovereignty. So for those of you who are new to the series, what we do here is take a certain faction's answer to a category of weapons in the game and do a quick little explanation about how each entry fits into the fray and what weapons fit what playstyles. There's very little discussion about stats or strategy, it's just a quick overview and then we move on. It's as simple as that. It's a series designed to prime you with some starter knowledge about weaponry that's around, and then you can use that information to pick out what weapons you want to do a bit more research about. Today we have the Vanu Sovereignty assault rifles in our crosshairs, and just to keep in mind guys, we do not cover nanite systems or directive weaponry in this series as of yet. Cool, let's get into things. As always here, we're kickstarting things off with the standard issue assault rifle, and in this case, we have the Pulsar VS1. And while, yeah, you may be that awkward, really introverted lad whose ability to share stuff about themselves is on par with a piece of pavement, the Pulsar VS1 is that wingman that will be able to carry you through any situation. You will struggle to find a situation where this weapon feels out of place, and because of that, it's a great option no matter how you want to build your medic as you get acquainted with the War of Araxis. The weapon's excellent accuracy and controllable recoil makes it quite adept at long-range fire, but its commendable rate of fire also makes it particularly savage in CQC, especially when you aim for those juicy headshots. I mean, hey, if someone isn't going to be embracing Papa Vanu's wisdom, then do they really need that head anyway? What are they going to be using it for? What are they going to be thinking about? Bonus checks in Unity? Ugh. And those of you who are familiar with the series should know the drill by now. We start with the default weapon, and then we move on to its S variant straight after. The Equinox VE2 is just a more chilled out version of the Pulsar VS1 that is even more willing to just go with the flow, man, sporting a much wider arsenal of attachment options including underbarrel launchers and shotguns, compensators, and ammo type modifications. This comes at a cost, however, a decreased fire rate which hurts the damage output, along with a slower reload time for both long and short reloads, and a slightly more intense vertical recoil pattern which can be wrangled back in with some correct attachments. There is something else that the Equinox brings to the table, however, besides its attachment options. The fact that over range, it's actually a little bit more potent, which does give it a bit more flexibility, and in those medium to long range engagements, it's actually a better option than the Pulsar VS1. Just something to consider for sure. Alright, up until this point, the ARs we've covered take on a pretty broad combat role, designed to be really masters of none. The HV45 is where this changes, and it does so with some pretty big gusto. This here is the Vanu's attempt to slap as much rate of fire as humanly possible into the barrel of a weapon, all the while somehow magically not melting said barrel. Not really sure how they do it, but here we are. With this weapon featuring the best-in-class rate of fire and hip fire by a decent margin by the way, and being the only VSAR with that juicy 0.75 times aiming down sights movement multiplier, this quite simply is the CQC powerhouse that more aggressive combat medics are going to fall in love with. It spits lead fast, well, plasma in this case, and it keeps your movement speed up there as well, all the while you do it. The CQC prowess does come at a cost, however. You may as well be throwing rotting fish at your enemies at anything that resembles the term distance, and its recoil at range can be a nuisance. Just know your limitations of the weapon, and you'll be just fine. So if the HV45 is a plasma vomit specialist that just paints an area in Papa Vanu's wisdom, then the CME is the scalpel of the operation that has the simple goal of just hitting where you point it. It's a simple weapon. The CME supports not only the best-in-class muzzle velocity for Vanu Sovereignty ARs, but also sports one of the best muzzle velocities across the board of automatic weapons in this game, full stop. Combined with what can only be described as one of the lightest known kicks produced by a projectile-based firearm, and you have a weapon that really acts as a laser beam even under sustained fire. It's a kinda turn your brain off and just click heads kind of weapon, which can be a good deal of fun in the right situation. However, the accuracy does come at the cost of damage output, which means that headshots are not only incentivized here, but they're necessary. Like, if you don't score those headshots, this weapon will put you on the back foot very, very quickly. Keep that in mind, play a bit more passively with the CME, and it can be a really good deal of fun. The Corvus VA55 is the odd one out in the VS AR arsenal, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the runt of the litter either, being the only full auto weapon rocking the 167 damage model. And being completely honest, that's really its whole deal. Like, it hits like a truck, but with its slower rate of fire, you do have to keep accuracy at the top of your priorities to make the most of the weapon. Yes, it does hit hard, but hitting the wall hard isn't going to really do anything for you. Thankfully, the recoil here means that keeping your crosshairs on target even after longer range bursts isn't going to be a challenge, and the reload time here is going to keep downtime to a minimum, which is a nice bonus. So some would ask, is it worth taking the CME or the Corvus for your longer range firefights? And it really does depend on what's more important to you, whether you prefer the bullets that you do hit to hit like absolute units, or whether you prefer to have nice, accurate, sustained fire. The Corvus is harder to control, but if you get that control down pat, it's going to be more rewarding, especially in the CQC department. The CME, again, is for those more passive players. So Corvus overall, very nice hard-hitting weapon. So the Terminus VX9, it's an interesting beast, and is one of the weapons that made its way to the front line a little later down the line on Araxis. It sports the second fastest fire rate for the category, falling just short of the HV45, and is without a doubt an incredible CQC platform. But if it fires slightly slower than the HV45, why take it for CQC? Where are its advantages? Why would you take this over the HV45? Well, for one, the reload speed is improved with a pretty snappy 1.9 second short reload time, which is actually great in the world of CQC weaponry. That is very snappy. But it also sports a recoil that spends less time trying to argue with you, and a less severe damage drop-off over range that gives it just a little bit more flexibility to play with. Longer range targets are going to be a lot easier to engage here with the Terminus by comparison to when you're running the HV45, all the while still sporting enough CQC, gusto to really flare its elbows out and get into those messy scuffs should it need to do so. This is a jack-of-all-trades weapon, sort of, that just sports a couple of extra features that make it worth your time in that CQC environment. It's a great frontline weapon to pick up with a bit more flexibility. And this leads us very nicely onto the two burst fire weapons available to our friendly neighborhood spandex enthusiasts. And while they're both burst fire weapons, they actually have some pretty big differences that change how you're going to be using them. We'll start off with the Equinox VE2 burst, which is, as the name kind of suggests, the burst fire equivalent of the Equinox, and therefore is the burst fire equivalent of the Pulsar VS1. It fires the same 143 damage round and sports the same theoretical fire rate if you perfectly time every burst. So it's actually a pretty fast firing burst fire rifle under the right timing. Combine that with the recoil pattern, which sports a less intense first shot of every 3-round burst, you can actually net some really accurate headshot chains in CQC to medium range. It's surprisingly effective considering its burst fire limitation. The Lacerta, on the other hand, takes the other side of the equation by being what can only be described as the most prominent exercise of asserting dominance at range that the Vanu Sovereignty assault rifle category has managed to come up with. This weapon only sports the glorious 167 damage model, but it also sports a recoil pattern that I struggle to fire fast enough to make a big deal out of. Seriously, this weapon does not move with its recoil. So, take the recoil that resembles an absent father figure and use it to apply enough headshots to your enemy's dome, and you can theoretically blast them out of existence in one burst within the maximum damage range. The effective range of the Lacerta is probably the furthest of all the ARs we've discussed here today, and the potential damage output at all ranges is really worth considering, as long as you're happy with ditching full auto capabilities. So to make it simple, if you want something with some longer range prowess for burst fire, take the Lacerta. If you like a spammier approach but still need the weapon to handle its bursts for you, take the Equinox burst. But guys, with all that said, and after a couple of crappy dad jokes, it's time we made our way to the end of the video. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this return to the Quartermasters overview series. It has admittingly been a very long time since I've done this series, and I do apologize for that, but hey, your boy's a busy man, and he's working on a lot of different projects at the moment, so please cut me some slack. If you enjoyed the video, guys, make sure you hit that like button, it goes a long way. And if you're new to the channel and you enjoyed the video, consider hitting the subscribe button, it goes a long way to support the channel as well. It means you have to stay up to date with all the videos as well. You can also find all my social media links, including Twitch and Discord, down below. I highly recommend joining both those channels because, well, we have a lot of fun there as well, and it's a good time catching up with you guys on a more personal level there too. Once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.